Welcome to this first presentation. I'm going to give it a couple more seconds and then I'll introduce our presenter and see if anyone else joins in the next couple of seconds. All right, cool. Hey all, my name is Cameron Bragg and I'll be moderating today's event. If you would like to turn on closed captions, please click on the CC button on the bottom of your screen. It should prompt a small menu and you should be able to select subtitles from there. We hope that today's event will serve many and that you are here with an open mind, heart, and good energy. Here at the College of Worcester, we do not condone any forms of bias, discrimination, harassment, and/or violence. These expectations still stand in a virtual setting. If an individual were to harm another and/or violate the safety of another during this event, I and other members of the Align Committee are allowed to remove them from the meeting and report you to Align's Executive Committee. This may affect their ability to join future Align conferences. And if you as a participant find that another participant is not adhering to these guidelines, you may alert an Align committee member and we will make sure to take care of your concern. This session is being partially recorded. So the first half will be recorded, and when we break into discussion, I will pause the recording. Marissa Tate is a senior cognitive and behavioral neuroscience major at the College of Worcester. During her first year at Worcester, she co-founded a successful organization known as Minorities in STEM, or MySTEM, that focuses on increasing retention of underrepresented students in STEM by providing equitable resources in and outside of the classroom, training, professional development, and career opportunities, while also working with STEM faculty and staff. While serving as president of the organization, she created and led STEM inclusivity workshops for STEM faculty, staff, and students, interns, TAs, educating them on common issues affecting marginalized individuals in STEM fields, inclusive practices, and ways to change current STEM curriculum that is exclusive of students from marginalized backgrounds. She has also served on the board of African Student Union, ASU, and is presented at multiple conferences on the experiences of African children of immigrants or immigrant children living in the United States. She is also currently serving as the president of Kappa Epsilon Zeta, a local sorority, and with her leadership has co-led campus-wide events addressing discriminatory acts perpetuated by Greek community of Worcester's campus, such as racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, sexual assault, and more. She also serves on Scott Council, the student governing body, where she created the accessibility representative for disabled students and students seeking accommodations on Worcester's campus, with the hope to build more representation for the disabled community while also advocating for campus-wide education, community building, and increases in accessibility and accessible practices. Without further ado, I'd like to present When Accessibility Ain't So Accessible. Thank you and enjoy.
Thank you, Cameron. Okay, so I'll be sharing my screen now and we'll do a small presentation like Cameron said, and then we'll stop recording and have a discussion. Okay, so I first wanted to start off by talking about disability and what we have seen in the past couple of years. There has been an increase in disabled students enrolling or attending post-secondary schooling, so colleges and universities. And 1 in 10 college students have a visible or invisible disability. College students with disabilities have lower retention rates, take longer to complete degrees, and have lower degree completion rates than do their peers without disabilities. And then FGLI students Many colleges and universities are also experiencing an influx of FGLI students in the past couple of years. Many FGLI students statistically less academically prepared than non-FGLI students are due to lack of resources and understandings of how college works and those kinds of things. And once admitted, first generation students in particular have lower college persistence, and FGLI students often face unique familial, cultural, and social transitions than do their non-FGLI peers. So, knowing all of this and together that disabled students and FGLI students are coming in an influx in the past couple of years in higher education, there's not a lot of discussion about those two intersecting identities. For one article that I was able to find with students with disabilities, this really touched on the ideas that a lot of students that have disabilities within higher education now have a financial burden, or they have had a financial burden since they were experiencing their symptoms and slash or getting care for their disability and those kinds of things. So Thomas R. Wolinin um, hit three major things that I wanted to talk about today. Having a disability is really expensive, and a lot of the things that we don't think about, those doctor's appointments, having to get extra accommodations on campus, or just having to go about different things like you might need a screen reader or those kinds of things that other students don't need. Um, and will make your college experience a little bit better, just your experience living in a very able-bodied world and environment that we have that is not very accommodating to disabled individuals. So it's expensive to do that. It's also very time consuming. A lot of the times you have students um, who have to think about, okay, I have to do this doctor's appointment, or I have to do this in order, I have to take this medication, I have to do these procedures to take care of my health while also balancing school. And the importance of appropriate aid packages, which we will touch on a little bit later, but Dr. Wolin really wanted to emphasize the fact that students with disabilities on college campuses in particular do not have the same exact resources that other students have, and other just FGLI students who are non-disabled as well, that they have specific needs and things that they need for their own financial aid that a lot of students are not getting because people don't think about the extra burden that the medical expenses and those kinds of things might have on students. And in this paper or article, there was discussion of the intersectionality of being first gen and also disabled. And so with this, TEVIS and GRIFFEN in 2014, they interviewed three college and graduate students from different backgrounds, but they were all first generation at least. Two of them were first gen and limited income as well. So they really wanted to focus on the strengths of the intersections of being disabled, but also FGLI. So they found that independence, families and independence, advocacy, so advocating for yourself, also for others, and just advocacy in general. A lot of marginalized students, because you have been advocating for yourself from a very young age due to your identities, coming to college, you might find that you're doing that for other marginalized individuals, and that's just something that comes about in your everyday practices. And then also mentor advocates. Mentors were really big, and I know this goes a long way for a lot of different students from marginalized backgrounds, but the two big things that they found in the success of these individuals were actually, they had like more than a 3.0 in school, so they wanted to see what actually helped them in their journey throughout their college careers or their academic careers in higher education in general, because they kind of got out of that stereotype of, um, getting out of college early or not being able to finish your degree and things like that. So they saw that independence advocacy and mentor advocacy were really, really big focuses for these individuals and how they were able to get to where they thought they were. They did interview them, so that's what they personally said about themselves, which I thought was pretty interesting and is something that we don't really talk about that often in terms of being disabled and also FGLI. So I also wanted to talk about, if that's the case, right? If we know that FGLI students and disabled students are coming in at the same, around the same rates, the rates are increasing as these students come into higher education. Um, and we understand that there are financial burdens and these things that might impact their college experience differently than other students. Then why exactly are we not talking about it more? Why are there still disproportionate rates of these students leaving college early, not finishing their degrees? Why are faculty members not super cognizant of these students, or just like staff members in particular at colleges not being able to help these students in the ways that they need? One thing is that there is a lack of understanding of disabled folks and also FGLI students as well. And then when you put those things together, there's just a big ball of we don't know what to do here. So lack of understanding of that and also how that impacts a student. And also limited training for students and for faculty staff members. I've heard, I hosted a disabled in STEM panel a couple weeks ago, and one of the faculty members said, we actually don't get training for like disabled individuals in general. They didn't know what the term neurotypical was. And thinking that our faculty members, at least at Worcester, I can say, but also with my research, I found that that was prevalent in other universities as well, that they do not get the training to help disabled students in particular, and there is a lack of training with helping FGLI students. Um, and so when you have those two identities coming together and you have a student in your classroom, you might not know how to best support them, especially outside of the formal accommodations that one might get with the ADA law and those kinds of things, but limited training for students in terms of, okay, how can you as a student succeed if you are FGLI and are disabled? What do you do after college? Now you might have student loans, you might have loans from medical bills, you might be in debt because of those things. What can you do as a student? There are limited resources on campuses to tell students, hey, this is a path that you can take, or this is something that we can talk about together, and what your post-graduation plan would be financially. And also thinking about students' rights. I am disabled. I was diagnosed with MS my sophomore year of college. And something that people are telling me, oh, you need to read up on all your rights and what access you have and what resources you have. And I mean, that was just like a lot of information that I just was not prepared for. And no one really sat me down and said, okay, this is what you need to know as a disabled individual, like what you need to do moving forward and what people can and cannot do when you're looking for jobs and those kinds of things. No one sat me down to do that. I was told to do that. Have I done that yet? Not really, because it is overwhelming. And I didn't have someone to, walk me through that process. And also, my family doesn't understand all of these things. There's still a lot of backlash, or not backlash, but just misunderstanding of my diagnoses, and how impactful it is for me now, and what that means for me in the future. But those two big things, lack of resources, of course, were something that I really wanted to hit on today. So, if these things are really important, why aren't we talking about it? And one of the things that I found when just doing a simple Google search saying like FGLI and disabled or disabled in FGLI, FGLI disabled students, however you form that, a lot of it is either or when we're talking about these students, and they're never intersecting identities. So, there are a bunch of articles that I found and just a bunch of papers in general or resources that are like support for first gen, limited income, or students with disabilities, support for these students, or it's never like an and, which is something that I found to be pretty interesting because I think oftentimes we forget that um, there is an ability, right, to have um, all of these intersecting identities and these identities that have faced a lot of oppression and marginalized identities from this very, able-bodied, classist environment that we live in. And honestly, I'm like, it's time to stop. We need to start thinking about FGLI is not just, first gen limited income students and that's it. You're just the first to go to college and you're from a limited income background. There are so many more other intersecting identities that FGLI students can have and do have, and it is real. And disabled FGLI students exist. They're real, valid, valuable, and worthy of higher education's attention, of attention from their peers, and just the respect. I just saw something in the chat about Chris Lamb's, also worth mentioning outright hostility from faculty and staff when students tell them about their disability, both with respect to class accommodations and in gatekeeping career paths. Yeah, I've had those experiences as well, especially when I was in my first early stages of my diagnoses. My I had a professor that kind of would they didn't believe that I was going through anything. I don't look disabled. I have a visible an invisible disability, and getting a lot of backlash, not wanting me to finish my work because I was at the hospital and they didn't believe I was at the hospital, though I gave them a doctor's excuse that I was there all weekend, and they did not want me to complete a quiz because they thought it was unfair that I was out of class. And I was like, I was in a hospital bed, but okay, sure. Um, Tanya said, at my institution, TRIO ends after a certain number of credits or is limited beyond sophomore standing. That is very difficult for transfer students. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's super difficult. And a lot of these resources are very limited, and they don't necessarily think about all of these different things. You might be a transfer student. You might have, you might be an international student or a student or a global nomad, and all of these things a lot of people don't think about when we make these resources and these things. So these are my references, very short little presentation just to get us started with the discussion that I wanted to. But yeah, let's start talking about it. So I will stop sharing my screen.